Morning. Welcome to the end of the school year, transitioning into summer. Some of us love the heat, but nobody loves that the kids are out of school and don't have routine anymore. So, as always, let's start with something fun. If you could be invisible, even just for the day, what would you do? I'm a little concerned.
Invisible or visible? What did you say?
Invisible. No one can see you.
Oh,
You're already
okay.
visible, Mel. I can actually see you
If
on
I was
this.
invisible, can I say what I really say what I would do?
Rob a
Yeah,
bank.
please.
Rob a
Please.
bank. That's the only
I
answer.
would
That's the
I'll be
only
like
answer.
cursing up a storm during certain meetings. I would be F-bombing all the meetings.
Mel, I think they could still hear you.
No. They probably won't. And if I can't F-bomb, I'll be like this. I'll do the knuckle. I'll do a few knuckle signs. You know what that means.
So Mel, you're still going to work. You're just, but
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, I'm just doing things that people can't see me doing, like doing curse words with my hands,
I see.
saying shut up where they can't see me saying shut up,
You're letting the unprofessional side of Mel come out.
right, but nobody sees me doing
She's
it.
letting her nonverbal scream.
Right,
I love that.
right.
All right, Brittany, you're robbing the bank. Just one or all of them?
Well, I'm gonna see how many I can get in. Like, is this a 24-hour period? Because I can
Sure.
hop
Let's
on a
do it.
plane or something, get an empty seat for
Well,
free.
wait, the money bags aren't invisible, are they?
So if you see a floating money bag, you gonna run towards me? Most people would be like, "Oh no, it's haunted." Nah, I got
Nope, I would
money.
want the haunted money bag.
Either that or I would go around messing with my kids and my sister. Definitely my sister. I'm freaking her out all day. But robbing the bank is still number one.
So Brittany, you mentioned like getting on a plane. Like that would be my thing.
That would be my thing too. I would get on a plane and just go somewhere and just, yeah, 100%.
You don't have to pay. You don't have to go through security.
Yep.
Or I would go through security with like all these metal things, even like if they're not illegal, but like I would just put them in my pocket to mess with the TSA and then just get on the plane. But like, I don't know, like not just travel, but like other places that I'd want to go that like I can't necessarily afford the entrance fee to. Like, I'm sure I could come up with like Disney World. Let's go to Disney World all day long.
You can always go to a Beyonce concert.
Same, right? Like all
Sit in the
these
front
things
row.
where I'm like, that is a ridiculous price. I'm not spending that money. Like
Dude,
I'm
Brittany, you
going.
could get backstage at a Beyonce concert. Like you could be on stage next to Beyonce at a Beyonce concert. We could really just live this whole thing up.
You guys came
Thank
up
you,
with
Mel.
such great answers. All I came up with, I would probably just prank my family and friends.
But I love it. It could be fun.
So I would, because of going with that, I've always wanted to like strap a GoPro to my kids and like see what the hell their day looks like. I would just follow them around and just be like, what is your day like? Because some of the stories I hear from school days and stuff are wild. And I'm like, it's like Lord of the Flies out there. So I would love to just be like their invisible GoPro that's following along just to see what the day is like.
Go to Starbucks and make your own coffee. Add more caramel in the bottom. Wrap it around the cup.
And that's clearly what Michelle is doing, except she might be going to Dunkin'.
I'm thinking like Sam, like the only thing I could think of was this pulling pranks. And like all you hear, if you can hear me, would be me giggling in the background, wherever I am, floating with my Dunkin' Donuts cup.
Endless refill all day, guys.
I'm just trying to
Yes.
figure out whether or not like how unhinged do I want to admit to being right now? Thank you,
I'm gonna
Brittany.
suggest not that unhinged.
Just a little.
So she mutes herself. She's like, oh, well, then I can't say anything, guys. I'll just be visible.
No. It was along the same line of Brittany going to the Beyonce concert for free and sneaking backstage, but mine takes it a little bit further into then spreading my own propaganda into Stray Kids' phones and stuff, and being like, and following myself on Instagram and everything, so that, oh my God, who's this girl?
Not as unhinged as I thought. I'll take it. That's acceptable.
It's
That's
not.
acceptable.
And probably steal some stuff or terrorize, haunt my best friend.
Emma, I feel like you're going into a library or archives or something somewhere.
I'm having a really hard time with this one. Like, I have no idea. And yeah, anything I thought of seemed like really stupid, but I'm not to say I'm a thief, but I'm thinking about what Brittany said with the bank robbery, and I was thinking like, well, like if you went into a store and you stole stuff and like the sensors would just be going off and they'd be like I would just keep walking in and out with stuff and like to have the sensors going off the whole time and they'd be like, who's doing this? You know what I'm saying?
I love that. That is much more exciting than like taking first editions out of like an archive or a library. Because that's what I pictured for you.
I guess I could do that too. You know, if I have a whole day, I could get a lot of things done.
She's gonna be productive, guys.
Can also change the lotto number so I win. So that's a legit thing, you know?
Okay, now we're starting to think. Now we're starting to come up with some really valid ideas here.
All right. So does anybody know how to make us invisible? Because we got a whole list. All right. But I gotta be honest, I don't want Mel to be invisible. I kind of just want her to be off camera.
I want Mel to think she's invisible.
Michelle's already had that happen to her, guys. I'm not gonna lie. We were in a meeting, and after the meeting, Michelle called me and she's like, I'm sorry my camera wasn't working and you couldn't see me, but we saw her the whole time. So it's a thing. Okay, so we want Mel to think she's invisible so we can all see her behaviors. We know that she's already told us how she's going to behave. There is no translation in her behaviors. She has verbally translated her behavior for us. But a lot of the times, we have to translate the actions that we're seeing from others, because they are not so forthcoming with us. And so how humans act and conduct themselves is how they interact with the world and with us. And why do we want to understand their behaviors? Why is it important to be able to translate the nonverbals, the facial nonverbals, the postures, the hand actions? Why is all that important?
To better communicate with them, to avoid triggering them in any way.
Yeah, it helps us look at potential areas where there's conflict. And if we can identify that, we can cause escalation, right? Or even if we're not meaning to cause it, right? It's where something can escalate. That's a better way to say that. Sorry. What else?
It also helps us, excuse me, it also helps us support other people, because oftentimes the behavior is not what's actually going on. So if we can translate that behavior, we can then get to the root of what's going on and support them more effectively.
Absolutely. It allows us to empathize with them. It allows us to sympathize with them. It allows us to try and put ourselves in their shoes and kind of see the world from their perspective. It allows us to build a meaningful connection with someone. And we know that a lot of behavior or a lot of successful placements are based on that relationship, right? And so we want to be able to try and interpret behaviors. What is the brain's role in our behaviors?
It controls our behaviors, present and past.
Yeah.
Yes. So it could be behaviors based off trauma, behaviors based off what's happening now. It controls, it is the control system for our entire bodies.
Right. It's our control center.
Yep.
Absolutely. And so it controls everything. It controls our breathing. It controls our heartbeat. It controls our cognitive functions. It controls our memory, which Mel, you just alluded to. It controls what happened to us in the past. It controls our decision making. And we know that our brain has different centers per se that control these different things. And so our amygdala lies in our brain, and that's our processing of fear, our fight. I can't do it. Fight, flight, freeze. Yes. Okay. We know that our prefrontal cortex is responsible for our executive functioning, which talks about our planning and our decision making. And so we know that trauma can cause, what can trauma cause? Sorry, I should have phrased that question better. What happens when a youth experiences trauma? How does it impact the brain? The different ways, lots of different ways.
They lose their ability to, well, we're speaking about the frontal, right? Decision making.
Any of it, anywhere in the brain.
They lose it. They lose their ability to make proper decisions. They make inappropriate decisions. And because that part of the brain is not 100% developed, makes it already harder for them to make the right decisions. On top of it.
Absolutely. It can impact how those the neurons are firing, right? The pathways that are firing, because it's not fully developed or because the development has been stifled. So it impacts that physical development. And so we know that this damage and dysfunction is in turn going to lead to behavioral issues. It can also lead to biological changes in the brain. Did y'all hear that? Okay, that was weird. Sorry. I don't know what it was. So we know that trauma impacts the brain impacts behavior. The brain is also, as we said, the control center, so it impacts our perception. It impacts how we understand the world around us, how we interpret events, how we interpret other people, how we interpret situations. How does our perception impact our emotions?
Are you asking us how does our perception impact our emotions?
Yes. Sorry. Apparently, I'm not using
Well, how you see
intonation
something
today.
It's okay. How you see something is definitely going to impact how you feel about it, which means that you can misunderstand the way somebody says something. You can misunderstand an event because your how you perceive it is completely different from what actually happened, and that's based off experience and trauma. So it definitely impacts it. It can impact it in a positive way, it can impact it in a very negative way, depending on your experiences.
And we know that if our perception is driving our feelings in turn drive our behaviors. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. We're going to watch 2 video clips, and just at this moment, just take them in. I froze. Am I unfrozen? Yes?
Yeah,
Okay.
you are.
So this first clip is from Nanny 911, so we'll just go with it for a minute. Okay.
We do go out to eat probably at least 3 times a week.
Yeah.
We're usually prepared for embarrassment.
The Harmony family eat out often, so it was a
Okay, so that's the first one. And the second one. So I apologize, there is some verbal language in the second one. It is kind of blurred out, but it's nothing you have not heard before working with our population.
I have been using the GLP-1
really?
injections through hers for 4 months.
That's
I
not
have
supposed
lost
to
30
happen.
pounds.
You going to jail. I don't give a Call the laws on her. You can't get out. You can't get out. You want me to tell him to let you out? No! Sit this out! Sit this out! Put your hands on me now! Put your motherfucking hands on me now! So to see y'all again. Give a fuck.
Okay. Initial reactions. Any just gut initial reactions to those clips?
They're very different. So one with a younger child, you would react differently, I think, than with an older teenager in terms of how you're redirecting, how you're addressing them, how you're trying to de-escalate the situation. And even how you would handle it ongoing. Like the younger kids, it would be almost like a practice and a routine of like, how do we behave when we're out in public? What do we do? What are the expectations? The older one, something clearly triggered them. We don't have enough of that story. But it would be a different situation because that one you're more managing the environment and trying to see how do we keep the young person safe and everyone else around them safe.
Thanks, Nellie, for sharing your thoughts, your initial thoughts. Mel.
I think that, so first I put this out there. I think that when adults act like that, in my personal opinion, that there's some type of arrested development. They're kind of going, this may have been something that this is how they probably react to things since they were children. Probably never outgrew that phase in life or never dealt with whatever trauma it was or whatever trigger that was. But it's harder to explain that to adults because she's an adult. So when they see an adult act like that in public, a lot of times right away, it's like, why would she act like that? What's her problem? Call the police. Nobody really tries to get to the bottom of what's really going on because at that age, they feel like you should have the know-how. So that's also what the problem is in that. And so like Nellie said, for a child, it's easier for you to somewhat like redirect, kind of go over what it is that you can do to help. As an adult, people just are under the pretense that you should already know. Like, there's no reason why you should be acting like this. When the truth is, this person may have, this may have been this person's behaviors their entire life. They may have went through something or had experienced some type of levels of triggers or some type of trauma that was never addressed. And so they resort back to their 3-year-old self every time they have an experience like this. I mean, that's what I got from the video because only difference is the age, but the behaviors were the same.
Yeah, and in both, right, there were some unsafe behaviors or some behaviors that in general would not be considered acceptable, but they were at very different ages. You're right. In general, there is 4 classifications let me back up. There are lots of frameworks for understanding human behavior. One of them classifies behavior into 4 types of human interaction. It is physical action, which is exactly what it sounds like. What is someone doing? What am I doing? What is that person doing? Literal action. Then there's the nonverbal cues, which many of us need to tame, which I'm one of them. So then there's our actual language. What are the words coming out of our mouth? And then there's the vocal delivery, right? How am I saying it? What is my tone of voice? What is my intonation, which we've already established I need to work on today? And we know that a lot of these have different percentages on how the other person receives them, right? That the physical action and the nonverbals actually speak louder than the true, what am I saying? The literal words. And so if we take a step back and we rethink about those videos, what are the physical actions of each person actually saying?
Angry. I'm angry.
Yeah. Brittany. Mel.
Sorry.
Mel.
Sorry.
Blah. Brittany. Melita. Sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't know that was a question. They both were frustrated. Something obviously triggered them. Just physically, you can see that they are unable to control their emotions in that moment. And they are leaning more towards frustrated and angry than anything.
Yeah. Nellie. Sorry, I got it right. You were all 3 and it just, sorry.
It's all good. I was just thinking of it's saying their needs aren't being met. Something isn't being met, and so they're reacting to that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. What about their nonverbals? I don't know. I don't recall if in the second video for the young adult, if we could actually see her face. So somebody will have to hopefully remember. I would have to watch that again and specifically look for that, but hopefully someone else remembers. Brittany.
I didn't see her face up until she got to the door and realized it was closed. And then you can see her face where you see that regret kind of set into her face.
Okay.
But while she was throwing the things in the aisles, you really couldn't see it. But definitely some regret towards the end of that door and them saying they're going to call the cops. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. Thank you for remembering that, because I could not recall. Anybody else about the nonverbals for either any of the participants in any of the videos?
I would say for the young adult, there was a little more of the look of fear on the face of just crap, what next?
Yeah. For me, the nonverbals of the parents in the first one stood out. Just that almost an utter exhaustion and exasperation is how I read their faces. And almost this looking at each other can you just fix it? Are you going to solve this? Because I got nothing kind of thing. What about their actual words, the language?
Well, the young adult was cursing everybody out.
Fair enough.
And then the bystander was pointing out that the door was locked and that the police were all going to be called. So that was kind of what was said.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. And the adults, I do feel I think, Nellie, you were talking about it a little bit earlier. The adults were trying to redirect, were trying to institute some type of structure, but it wasn't necessarily successful. What about that vocal delivery, the tone of voice, the intonation? Brittany, you talked about in that second video where how he was pointing out that the door was locked. For me, I perceived it almost as like he was laughing at her.
Oh, he definitely was. He was definitely pointing out her behaviors to her, laughing at her, letting her know, but also letting her know that it was inappropriate the way she was acting as well.
Agreed.
Versus like a family who might be with a young child who's having a tantrum in a restaurant, they might be a little like milder in their tone, trying to bring their child kind of back down to baseline, trying to, could you sit down? Could you try to relax? Do you want something? So with both approaches, it might be differently, but the person who was acting out in both videos would be yelling or screaming. So they would be very high pitched.
Yes. Yes. We lost someone. Everybody just moved on my screen. Okay. All right.
That guy poked at her too, like even laughing. You're about to go. I mean, I probably would have did the same thing, but he was wrong.
But what he was saying was causing her to escalate even more, of course. Because you could also see when you were talking about the
nonverbals.
and you guys were saying when she knows the door was locked that she seemed a little bit regretful or afraid, but then immediately went back into masking that to show that, to make it appear that she didn't care or like that she wasn't afraid. So I think that's part of it too. It's quickly hiding that to continue on where you're at emotionally.
Yeah, I love that, Lauren. Welcome, handsome. Sorry, Mel. That baby's not coming on without us all saying hello. Hi, handsome. All right, so one of the other frameworks is what is the function of that behavior? This is really from an ABA approach, that function behind the behavior. And the 4 categories there are attention seeking, whether it's positive or negative, that person is getting a response from other people, and that's why they're engaging in the behavior. The second one is escape. They're trying to avoid, they're trying to avoid something. They don't want to do homework. They don't want to sit at the table, whatever it is. Okay. Sometimes escape will also be avoidant. You can hear those used interchangeably. Access. They're trying to gain something that they want. Whether it could be an actual tangible item, it could be an activity, it could be a situation. So they are trying, the behavior they're exhibiting, they believe is going to gain them something. And then the last one, the 4th one is sensory. What they're doing is stimulating and providing input for them in some manner. So if we take a step back and we look at these 2 situations through that lens, does what was going on ring true to fit in any of these categories for you? And which one?
I think that one thing that you have to look at before you even evaluate that is going back to where you were talking about the functions of the brain in terms of behavior. Bring it back to the fact that all behavior stems from the brain and body's job of surviving. And everything that we do is based on what our body and brain are perceiving as needs in order to survive. And especially now, it's not the same as it was thousands or 10,000s of years ago, where the threats to us are necessarily as clear as they used to be. So when we see things like that, it's often that confusion in what we're perceiving as being danger or a threat or something that your brain thinks that you need to survive when maybe you don't necessarily need it, like ice cream sometimes. But it does trigger this big emotion. It can trigger that big emotion in you because that's where it's stemming from all the way down. So, to first think about that and then the layer on top of that to decipher what the type of behavior, like you were saying, what to categorize it into.
A function.
Yeah. I think that's the first step to say, well, okay, so the child, I guess, was upset. It said in the video that they wanted ice cream, so they had a meltdown. So their tantrum was, I guess, related to wanting something or wanting a physical thing or even attention about it. Whereas the young adult, we don't know what caused that, so it's hard to say. But yeah, I can't say what the goal was there.
Yeah. And Lauren, I thank you for bringing out that this translation of behaviors is very, very complicated. And in no way are any of these things that we talked about meant to imply that it is simple. Truly, the discussion is to try and help us step back, because when we're involved in it, it can feel, we talked last time about Q-tip and HALT, right? But it can feel very emotionally overwhelming for us, and it can feel personal, and it can be dysregulating for us. And so by providing different frameworks, it can help us step back and provide a lens to look at it and help us depersonalize it. And so that's what really all of this is about. But I really thank you for pointing out that it is not simple. It is not a one size fits all. And it is not just because they wanted to not do their homework, right? There's always multi-layers. So something for us to keep in the back of our head and our mind in talking about this and in trying to really understand what's going on. Any other thoughts on this sort of ABA approach? Okay. Sorry, Brittany, okay. I just saw your hand. Sorry. I'm used to the hand. So looking at things from a behavioral stance, kind of like we talked about today, and like Lauren just, brought to our attention, that there is that mental health and side that really does compound things, is really the framework that we need to take with our youth. And some of the things it can help us with is that it can teach social skills, it can teach communication. These are crucial for building and maintaining positive relationships, not just in your house, but also at school, the soccer field, in the art class, dance class. Also, in the long run, it can help identify, regulate, and express emotions more effectively, something that many of the youth in foster care truly, truly struggle with. And so the last thing, and I want to kind of wrap up with this, is if you see any themes with the foster youth about this translating behaviors, are there consistent themes that foster parents misinterpret, that they say, they're just being, and I hate to say this out loud, but they're just being a brat. But it's really a misrepresentation, or they're just being difficult. They're lying. And those are just some examples. where there's actually a theme and an underlying misinterpretation, mistranslation of the behaviors. And maybe it's not a foster parent, sorry, maybe it's a school, maybe it's a coach, maybe it's the bio parent, maybe it's DCF worker. So I apologize, I shouldn't have limited it to foster parents.
I think one of the themes I've seen is it's difficult to translate when children are demonstrating negative attention-seeking behaviors, but recognizing that they just don't know how to ask for positive attention. They just don't know how to seek out positive attention. And so instead, they have negative attention-seeking behaviors. That's something that I think is a theme I've seen.
Thank you, Mariah. Hi, Nellie.
I'll also add that sometimes I think it's also for the adults to take a step back and do some of the hard work, ask more of the questions, dig a little deeper, because it's very quick to dismiss or say the child's being a brat, the child's being naughty, they're acting up, they're doing this and that, but forgetting that the child is a child. They're still learning, they're still developing, and if they haven't had the opportunities to be taught it, then how can we have the expectation be laid out for them? And so we take for granted sometimes as adults, like back to what Mel was saying, like you just think you should know this, like you should do this. For teenagers also, you just expect them to have these skills, and if they haven't been taught it or never had the opportunity, then how do we expect it from them? And so it's almost a cop-out for the adult to just be like, well, this is what they're doing, and leaving it at that and not doing some of that work to really help address it and work on it with them.
Thank you, Nellie. That's such a great point, that sometimes as adults, we forget that either someone actually taught us or we had to teach ourselves, and what that process is like. And that we have the opportunity to do it differently for someone.
And that goes for, just like you were saying, not just foster parents, but even the school people that we deal with who forget a lot of these pieces and just think everyone's starting off at the same place. They're not. And so we need to really look at what skills have they been taught, what have they been exposed to, and how do we get them so that they can be on par with some of their peers.
I think for me, one of the recurring themes I see is that the nonverbals and the behavioral piece speaks so much louder for our youth, more often than the verbal piece. And sometimes even I think that the intonation and the tone of voice, all of that speaks louder as well, and that the actual words truly are, in a lot of situations, are the least of their communication, whether it's because they don't actually have the words, or because they've learned to survive by saying what people want to hear. Any final closing thoughts? Okay, well, hopefully this was helpful, and we'll see you next month.